the Ministry of Music here at Richmond, the choir, our band, Bram and Marianne, and all the people that work so diligently to help us worship God with joy. So we give thanks for that. The good life. What is the good life? I'm guessing that most of you missed the recent luxury and supercar weekend held September 8th to 9th at the Van Dusen Botanical Gardens in Vancouver. Spread out over 17 acres of lush vegetation, you could find yourself next to a wide variety of supercars and also like yachts, including the world's very first Porsche, or Porsche. It will only set you back $30 million. Looks like a stripped-down Volkswagen to me. Or you could buy the brand new Bugatti, which would only set you back $3 million, only a tenth. You know, recently our NDP government brought in a new sales tax of 15% on any cars that are over $125,000. And if your ride happens to cost you over $150,000, you better be prepared to pay 20%. And then with the GST, that's 25%. So 25% on top of what you already paid if your car happens to cost you over $150,000. One headache I don't need. Now, if you thought that that would scare some of the buyers off, you don't really know Vancouver very well. According to a guy named Robert Bronze, who is the sales manager at Lamborghini Vancouver, the demand still outstrips supply. There's a brand new Lamborghini out there. It's called the Lamborghini Aventador SVJ or something like that. The SVJ is Italian for really, really fast. There's only 9 of them that have been promised for Vancouver, but the demand is double that. The price, by the way, of these new Aventadors is $517,770 US. So you do the conversion, and then don't forget to add the 25% sales tax. In a report in the Globe and Mail, the sales manager, Robert Bronze, just shrugged and said, you know, the tax is hurting the market, but you know, we're only here for a short time, and you can't take it with you. So apparently, since you can't take it with you, you might as well spend as much as you can. Sometimes as ostentatiously as you can. Right? The good life. Oh, the good life. Did you ever see the movie Crazy Rich Asians? How many of you have seen it? That was a bit of a sensation when it was released recently. It's a lot made of the fact that it's the first Hollywood studio movie in a long time that features pretty much an all-Asian cast. You know, there are just over 7 billion people that live on this planet, and over 60% of them actually live on the continent of Asia. So you'd think it would make sense to make more movies that feature Asian cast members. Some of you have seen the movie. Did you like it? You know, maybe you probably didn't really care that the cast was almost all Asian. You probably either liked it or you didn't because you liked the script, you liked the story, maybe you liked it because it was such a visual feast for the eyes, eh? I spoke with one young person who said to me, it's the best movie she's ever seen, ever. Oh, really? Have you seen The Godfather? I wondered why. Why would this young person tell me that it was such a great movie? Because in my opinion, you know, and I'm not a movie critic, it was an okay movie. It was a standard script, a standard, you know, love story. Ordinary girl who happens to be a university professor meets kind of an ordinary guy who happens to be the heir to the biggest land developer fortune in Singapore. These two young lovers who are really good people need to overcome obstacles, and they have to overcome the scary mother-in-law, who, by the way, is named Auntie Eleanor. I think what this young person liked about the movie was the way the movie portrayed the good life. Beautiful people, beautiful homes, beautiful Singapore in all of its glory. Amazing food, clothes. There's the wedding scene where the bride walks down the aisle, but before she walks down the aisle is flooded with water like a river. And she's walking down this flooded aisle while the guests are like fanning her with butterflies, and the singer is singing Elvis Presley's Can't Help Falling in Love with You. This movie is basically Instagram on steroids, right? No wonder the kids love it, because it speaks their language. It speaks their language. It triggers their most visceral responses, especially if you've been a kid who's been raised on looking at one of these little small screens and who follow the latest social media celebrity who posts shot after shot after shot of themselves lounging by the pool or dancing away at the latest nightclub. I remember the show, maybe you did too, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, with Robin Leach. You know, you'd have that wonderful, welcome to the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It was never like this, eh? It was never like this. Even in religion, sometimes the good life, thoughts about the good life, are hard to avoid. You know, maybe you know Joel Osteen. He's the megachurch pastor. This church in Houston has around 52,000 members per week. 52,000 members who attend per week. He wrote a book called Your Best Life Now. In the opening of that book, Osteen and his wife find themselves standing in the midst of a brand new, beautiful home that's in the final stages of construction in their neighborhood. It's a house far beyond their means at the time, but his wife turns to him and says to Joel, "One day, Joel, we're going to live in a house, a beautiful home just like this." And even though Osteen himself didn't think that they would ever be able to afford a home like that, his wife convinced him to believe. And he writes that he got rid of his limited thinking and started to agree with her that somehow, some way, God could provide. God could bring this to pass. And he writes several years later, through a number of different real estate deals, they were able to build a house just like the one that they had viewed. Best life now. The good life. But really, is this what the good life is supposed to mean? Is this what the good life is supposed to mean? You know, we live in a world where some ambition is good and it's necessary. But the problem with most kinds of ambition is that they're almost always about us. Almost always all about us. And when our ambitions are essentially selfish, our principles get abandoned in pursuit of our own desires. That's the problem with ambition. And our text from James makes this problem crystal clear. James writes, "Where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind." Bitter envy and selfish ambition is not born of wisdom from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, and devilish. The alternative, says James, is the wisdom that comes from above. And the good life, says James, cannot be found by seeking it directly. You can't find the good life in a beautiful house or a fancy car. You can't find the good life through exotic locales or endless resources. It's not about success, what we achieve. It's not about fame, who knows our name. It's not about wealth, what we've acquired. The paradox, according to James, is that the good life, in order to know the good life, we can't get it. We can't know it by stocking up on our stuff. Rather, we need to seek wisdom. We need to seek wisdom. Wisdom from above. We need to seek that wisdom which is pure and peaceable, which is gentle and willing to yield, which is full of mercy and good fruits without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. If we seek that wisdom, says James, then the good life will follow. And what we do then is to live out this wisdom and make it real in our daily lives. Show by your good life, that your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom. James invites us to lead a good life, a life of works done in gentleness that is rooted in wisdom. False wisdom talks incessantly, but true wisdom listens. False wisdom blathers on about faith, but true wisdom quietly goes about faithful acts. True wisdom understands that there is no real faith without works, and true wisdom understands that more often than not, less is more when it comes to what comes out of our mouths. Think about the people in your life. Think about the people in your life that you could characterize as having lived or are living good lives. I know a woman back from my former congregation. She's quite elderly now. When I first met her, she lived on an acreage, but the acreage happened to be in the city. And in fact, it was adjacent to one of the most ritzy neighborhoods in Calgary. Many, many people came to her small old house that was on the property with offers to buy her land, and she rejected them all. Each afternoon, she would go out with her boots and gloves on, and she would take a large wheelbarrow, and she would begin to pull weeds, often filling a dozen wheelbarrows. She called it her Old Testament workout. When she finally did sell her property, she basically gave it away to the Jewish center that was next to her property so that they could expand their facilities looking after senior citizens. She got enough money out of that deal to buy the house in which she grew up that her father had built for her mother. Her mother was still alive, but suffering from dementia. Moving back into that old house rekindled in her mother a connection to a long-lost past, and she found some peace and comfort there before she died. You know, you'd never know it from talking to her, but my friend was one of the leading social workers in the government of Alberta. By the time she retired, she was responsible for all the social workers in the southern half of the province. She spearheaded our congregation's involvement with In From the Cold Ministries, where we opened up our space to 50 homeless people each week. Then she coordinated our refugee ministry, which began with 5 families that we sponsored from Somalia that lived in a house that she bought and donated to the church for refugee ministries. She told me that in her will, she was leaving the house that she was living in for the church's ministry when she died. I don't know of anyone who encapsulates the good life, a life of works done with gentleness born of wisdom, any better than my friend. She's old and she's frail now, but her life has sown a harvest of righteousness. Her life has sown a harvest of righteousness. She has submitted her life to God. She knows what it is to draw near to God, and she knows what it is to have God draw near to her. Now, I'm not saying that each one of us should go out and try to be saints like my friend, but I think it would be wise for us to think about how we're going about living the good life that God desires of each of us. How are we living the good life that God desires of each of us? There's a confidence that comes from knowing the wisdom from above, the wisdom that assures us that each one of us are the beloved children of God, that each one of us are made in the image of our Creator, in the likeness of God. And yes, it is true that we are only here for a short time. Yeah. And it's true that we cannot take it with us. But when we have the confidence of knowing who we are and to whom we will return, when we have the assurance that God in Jesus Christ has done for us far more than anything that we could achieve on our own, by ourselves, if we have that confidence, then we can spend ourselves. Then we can spend ourselves, our resources, our time, talent, and treasure in service to others. This is the path that the kingdom of God calls us to follow. It's a path rooted in wisdom, evidenced through gentleness. You know, I don't begrudge people having nice things. I like nice things. It's okay to like nice things. But we need to be careful, eh? We need to be careful. We need to be wise. Remember the words of Jesus. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust consumes and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. A gentleness born of wisdom is about being at peace with our own selves, about who we are and about what we have. It doesn't mean that we stop striving to be better. Right? It doesn't mean, well, there's nothing I can do. Doesn't mean we stop striving to be better. It does mean that our effort isn't rooted in selfish ambition, but rather in a desire to be more and more faithful to the vision and the plan that God has for each one of us. The good life, the best life, can be the life that we're actually living right now, if we know where our treasure is, if our lives are rooted in the wisdom from God, and live out among God's people with gentleness, mercy, and peace. I read this week that Instagram, do you know Instagram? People post pictures on Instagram. Instagram is threatening to ruin our travel photography. People are seeing pictures posted online on apps like Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest that show the same sort of pictures over and over and over again. You see pictures of people's feet dangling over a cliff, right? Or out towards a lake, or out towards some beautiful vista, but it's always the feet. You see people standing in the middle of the road. This is another very popular one. You see a big mountain vista, you see this road, a deserted road, and there's a person standing in the midst of it. It's repeated over and over and over again. You see people, for some reason, standing on top of their cars. This is a popular one. And then there's the other picture of people inside their tents with their tent openings held wide open, and they use the opening as a frame for the picture outside, right? But they're the same pictures that get repeated over and over and over again. Why take the same pictures that we've seen? Because according to one photographer, we want to get approval, right? You post the stuff on Instagram because you want to get likes. You want to get likes. We want to be seen as popular. It seems that sometimes, for some of us, that popularity, that sense of approval, that self-esteem only comes as we parrot what other highly visible and famous people have done. But you know, God did not create us to be clones of someone else. God didn't create you to be someone else's clone. God created us to be unique, to be individual, to be exceptional, right? To be exceptional. God created us to be comfortable within our own skin, to be at peace with who we are, and to be at peace with God. In the book Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, there's an important conversation between young Harry and the headmaster of Hogwarts, Professor Dumbledore. Harry had discovered this peculiar artifact called the Mirror of Erised, which reflected back to the observer that which they most deeply and most desperately desired in their lives. And for Harry, when he looked into the mirror, it was the image of his long-deceased parents. For his friend Ron Weasley, it was the image of himself holding the house trophy. Dumbledore explained the power of the mirror to Harry in this way. The happiest man on earth would be able to use the Mirror of Erised like a normal mirror. That is, he would be able to see himself exactly as he is. What defines our happiness? What defines our happiness? What is the good life? It is not about our stuff. It is about our story. Right? It is not about our stuff. It's about our story. It's about letting go of ambition that only seeks to serve ourselves. It's about letting go of the envy that causes disorder and conflict. It's about looking into the mirror and being able to see ourselves as those made in the image of our Creator, as those loved by God. Our good life is embedded in the story of our God, who created us to live faithfully and confidently, doing works with gentleness, born of wisdom. So let's just do that. Let's just do it. Thanks be to God. We're going to respond.